So today I would like to talk a little bit about a poem that I wrote in the last week. So first I'll read it. One life that I lived, I was bald, wrinkly, freckled, and lonely. The other, I was a woman with a manly face and thick legs. I can remember one time when I was an attractive man and traveled the world with my loving wife until the rightful age of 54. I'm not sure if I prefer being a man or a woman each time I live another life. Ugliness gives me more time to think. Beauty makes it pass like a blink. I have raised many children. I've learned math, medicine, and philosophy only whenever I was lucky enough to be born west of Romania. I farmed nearly every fruit and vegetable and worked on the many inventions of both early and modern man. I've lived with no winter. I've died from starvation. I've survived cancer more than once and closed my eyes to tumors and many illnesses. I can't remember living to be a century old, but I have seen a few of my great grandchildren, some blonde, some black, some who spoke Chinese. So the illustration kind of explains itself. The conga line of past selves. To me, this is a concept of someone going through the stream of living for perhaps 5,000 years. Perhaps 50 years ago from now, 2020, a man lived who was bald, wrinkly, freckled, and lonely, as the first paragraph. So, one life that I lived, I was bald, wrinkly, freckled, and lonely. Most of the traits that I identify at the beginning of that second sentence refer or point out the fact that he was considered objectively unattractive, perhaps. And that was the cause of his loneliness. And that's all he has to say about that life. One life that I lived, I was unattractive and lonely. The other being life that the soul lived, because this is basically a soul that's lived many different lives. This concept really came to me after reading the poem called The Egg by the same author that wrote the Martian book, which became a major motion picture starring Matt Damon. So basically, he explains life and becoming God important because you live so many different lives and so many different experiences, but you've developed enough emotions to have complete, perhaps, empathy, character growth, separation from the material of this world, because each time that you come and go, you start to realize how much less worth there is to it. You never come in like completely as a blank slate, but there's a slight deja vu that might come to you time to time throughout your life that would shape, like kind of a nurture that you take with your soul each life that you live. So your soul could be an accumulation of many scars, many experiences, many learning opportunities, which can define how you'll live your next life very lightly, kind of like a very light leader in front of you, kind of guiding your soul to become more aware of the big picture and how little this world should define you once you leave it, and then just a wholeness to your soul that you could become God through complete understanding of many different experiences and opportunities and probabilistic chances that a human will go through in their life. So now, the second sentence or paragraph, sorry, the other life that I lived, although it's the other, I was a woman with a manly face and thick legs. So again, unfortunately, an unattractive person. Manly face being strong features, prominent brow, large nose perhaps, square jaw, probably didn't wear makeup and stuff like that because of the fact that they didn't really get much encouragement or hang around with people that would encourage that during their younger years and development stages, the development stage of their sexuality. And thick legs, um, defining the fact that she was not exuding tremendous amount of sexuality. Um, so, and I said I was a woman, not a female. So she actually became a woman that still had a manly face and thick legs. So, regardless of what she was like when she was younger, majority of her woman mature years, she was defined by having these characteristic traits that might not have been overly appealing. Doesn't say anything about her being lonely though, luckily, but she's focusing on her physical issues that she might have been very aware of and impacted by during her lifetime. And then it goes, I can remember one time being, I can remember another life that I lived when I was an attractive man. So now we have a complete change, a complete spin on the experience of what life can be, and traveled the world with my loving wife. So not only is he attractive, but he has a loving wife. So if you compare that to the first paragraph, unattractive and lonely, and then attractive and loving wife. So nice compliment, rational expectation of being an attractive man. And he's traveling the world, so he's also got a lot of passion, most likely an interesting person to be around, wants to enjoy life instead of being lonely and think about his physical anguish. He's actually embracing the life by traveling and trying to have a partner that can enjoy that with him and not settling for somebody, but actually finding somebody that he considers to be loving until the rightful age of 54. And rightful age, he travels the world. He has a beautiful, loving wife. I assume she's beautiful, but she was loving nonetheless. And that's what gives him that rightful age, that completeness, that bucket list checked off in every way, 54. And that's not even a very old life, but to him, rightful age, everything's been checked off, complete bucket list, which is really nice. And then I could go through the complete contrast of being first a man that's lonely and unattractive to a woman that's unattractive. At least that's her focus. Perhaps she was lonely too, or just not feeling complete as a woman or completely desirable as a woman, to a man that's attractive and embracing life, traveling the world, getting experiences with a partner, as Jordan Peterson explained in an existentialism lecture that I listened to. Steven Pinker explains that that can be a big thing for happiness and avoiding depression, is having a supportive partner to share a majority of your life purpose. And this man seems to have that. So that would most likely be an easy suggestion that his life was quite fulfilling and happy. Then, so now he's went through a few lives, this soul has went through a few lives. I get a modern feeling of these lives, traveling the world, a woman concerned about her features and a man concerned about his features. That's to me a very metrosexual, very last 100 years or so, when people could actually have their photos taken, media and stuff. So I get the impression that most of these lives would have been within the last 100 years on this earth. So now you have the soul that's went through a few lives, and the soul is saying, I'm not sure if I prefer being a man or a woman each time I live another life. So that's interesting. That the preference, because they're so perhaps similar and interchangeable, he's not really that concerned whether he comes back as a woman or a man, which is an interesting consideration. That's why I added it. I thought that was a unique thing to be able to say, I'm not sure if I prefer being a man or a woman each time I come back. And I thought that was kind of an interesting, ironic attempt to realize that after going through, you might not even see much contrast, and it would kind of blur together whether you are a female or a man, considering all the different kind of experiences you can have being each sex, that each one could be just as enjoyable, which I thought was interesting. Now, this is my favorite two lines because this is my rhyming line. I didn't mean to rhyme these two sentences, but I think it flows really nicely. And I really like it as like a quote by itself. If you were talking about reincarnation, the person knew that that's what the quote was about. Ugliness gives me more time to think. Beauty makes it pass like a blink. So to me, that's so rational and so um, such a simple observation to what life typically is. Ugliness, if I have it during my life, provides me a lot of isolation and introversion. It's not that I choose, but the nurture that I receive during life from my ugliness can make me a lot more isolated and give me a lot more time to think and maybe develop character. And then beauty makes it pass like a blink, meaning the novelty of everything you're going to experience. I've heard that before, that when you're young, time seems to go really slow. You're experiencing so many things. So actually, that's interesting, because that is a complete opposite of what they say. They say that when you're young, you go through so many new experiences. The novelty of everything makes it seem like it takes so much longer. That your youth is like very a long duration when you come back to look over how long it felt like you were on this earth. And then when you look at your older age, you actually um, you actually time seems to pass by very quickly due to the fact that less experiences, less calculations, less storage going on in your brain. So it just seems to pass much quicker. But I meant more like, because it's such a pleasure, because there is no isolation time per se, and because you're always doing something, it just feels like it was just a blur, because you're just so occupied, and you have a partner with you, so you have so much interaction going on. Perhaps if you're beautiful, the likeliness of you being alone, if you're attractive in this world, is much less, in my opinion. So that's kind of what I was saying. But I like the think and blink rhyme. The comma ugliness gives me more time to think. Beauty makes it pass like a blink. I love it. And then it goes on to imagine that many lives have passed now. I have raised many children. I have learned math, medicine, and philosophy, many different lives accumulating. One, perhaps a doctor, once very into math. And that gives me the impression like 1,000 years ago, or maybe 500 years ago, an academic that was very invested in math, like Isaac Newton would have been, or Galileo, or Euclid. And then medicine, who knows, could have been an Egyptian medical practitioner, or could be a recent, could be anything. That's what's the beauty of that. And the philosophy, maybe Greek philosophy, being like ancient Greece that they would have lived, maybe in Rome as a Stoic philosopher, maybe someone of the Enlightenment philosophy movement, maybe an existential philosopher. So a lot of range there. That's what I like about it. And then the next sentence, only whenever I was lucky enough to be born west of Romania. So to me, the reason I said that is because I was thinking of the probability. Let's say they live 100 lives to get to the point of, as the poem, the egg brings like a complete understanding of what it's like to be human in many different variety. Let's say they lived 100 lives and they had to be born typically west of the land of Romania, being like the western part of the world, Europe, or North Africa, or anywhere in North America or South America. I know Asia has a lot of universities, especially in the last 100 years, maybe even longer than that, and Russia and stuff like that. But I was just trying to say, like, only when I was born into Western culture in most instances. That's what I'm basically saying. Then I like this. This is going to like the 100 to 1,000 lives. I've farmed nearly every fruit and vegetable, and worked on the many of inventions of both early and modern man. So to me, that's just like a stream of maybe 100 or 1,000 lives that somebody could have lived and accumulated so much different. And that this could be from the egg. So the person could have lived 10,000 or years, being like when we were in the agricultural revolution and farming every fruit and vegetable in the world. This is could have been when they were born east of the land of Romania too, in Russia or Asia. And that's what the poem, The Egg, kind of talks about being born as a farmer in China one life. And that's what the egg really represents too, is that it's a back and forth. Like each one of these lives is not chronologic. It could have been back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, which I think is a really unique idea, to realize that your soul might not even have the boundary we say we can't travel in time, but maybe your soul does, which is really beautiful. I've lived with no winter. I've died from starvation. I've survived cancer more than once. So that I've lived with no winter, being like one life that I lived, I was in America or Central America, or like I mean South America, or like along the equator. I've lived a life and never experienced snow, kind of idea. That's what I was trying to say, basically, because I'm from Canada, so the idea of someone being born and never even knowing what snow was, if they were born like 3,000 years in the Inca civilization, they would have never known about snow, perhaps, and stuff like that, which is really interesting. I died from starvation, meaning that one life I could have lived a life of poverty. Um, and that's just another kind of facet of reality that I wanted to add to it, because if I would live 100 lives, chances are one, I would be unfortunately homeless and probably die from starvation, and depending which country I became homeless in. I've survived cancer more than once, which I thought was really cool. To first say I've survived cancer, and then more than once, I thought that was a neat concept, because um, cancer is so prominent, and then to say I've survived cancer more than once, it just shows how many lives they've lived, and um, kind of the positive idea that humans have when they go through such a tribulation and survive. It just was to try to accentuate the fact that that would be like a major accomplishment of the soul, to go through such a physical anguish, and the the appreciation and the longing to live longer could really modify or impact the soul in a very interesting way, such that to develop character or develop worth of existence and gratitude for everything they would have experienced, and wanting to say bye to the world in a very healthy and loving way. I've closed my eyes to tumors and many other illnesses. So that was to basically say that, like, not only did I survive cancer, but I've died to the most horrific things that humans have, that humans can usually die from, being their body influencing it, or external things like illnesses. So I was just trying to say, because I've lived so long, I've died in so many different ways that were hardly ever pleasant. Then the last paragraph, I can't remember living to be a century old. So even though I've lived so many lives, just out of probability, I was never lucky enough to live a century old. Or maybe I did, and I had a mental degradation closer to, and I don't remember it. And that's the beauty of it. I can't remember living to be a century old. I didn't say I've never lived to be a century old. I just can't remember it. So maybe my mind just wasn't even aware of it. So that's kind of a neat concept, considering the mind can go as you approach those much older and difficult years for the body to keep up in every single manner. But I have seen a few of my great grandchildren. So another, just like I've survived cancer more than once, but I have seen a few of my great grandchildren. Most people, I've heard so many people that approach their 60s and 70s or even 50s and be like, I just want to see my great grandchildren. That's a huge thing for many people. I've heard it throughout the years, and that's why I thought I'd add it. What an accomplishment! But I have seen a few of my. Who cares if I live to be a century old? I've seen the furthest of my lineage that most people get to see. So that to me is really important. And then I was showing the variety. Now I was bringing the fact that not only did I live many lives, but I've been many races. And that's to be that some of my offspring were blonde, some of my lineage ended up being blonde, meaning like that's a rare hair color, which was to show like the variety. Some black, another. I've lived in many different places and been born in different areas, and some, and notice I say some. So like, yeah, there were many, perhaps even blonde, and many black, and some who spoke Chinese. So just to show the range of where I've lived and the different races I've been, which I think is beautiful. So this is the poem I wrote last week. Been thinking about the afterlife, the soul, scarring, the purpose of life, and the different kind of possibilities that can occur in your afterlife, or after you leave this physical place and your soul is left to either be something of Western theology belief, or perhaps something completely different than we've ever even thought of, and just kind of like going through a mental, or as Einstein would say, like a thought experiment. That's what it was. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.